We have Evgeny here, a pretty good volleyball player himself, and our current physiotherapist. So we're going to be taking you through some shoulder exercises you can do to make sure that you can handle all the sets that you're going to be dealing with on the beach and indoor. So the first thing you're going to do is a self-assessment. So before any of our athletes start doing certain exercises, we want to make sure they have the prerequisite to do those exercises without the chance of getting injured. So the first self-assessment you're going to do is called the Shoulder Flexion Test. So what he's going to be doing is bringing his shoulders up, his back, thoracic spine, the upper back is against the wall, his head is against the wall, everything's flat. He brings his arm up, keeping your arm straight as high as you can, and with a thumb tucked in, you want to be able to touch the wall with each arm. And watch his back touching the wall. So his arm's staying straight, his head isn't moving, he's not hiking his shoulder, and his back is staying against the wall. What you might find if you fail this assessment is that the arm will bend a little bit to cheat to get there, okay? Or if you do keep your arm straight, your thoracic spine might start coming off the wall to give yourself some more range, which is pseudo range. It's not really coming from your shoulders thoracic joint, especially your scapulothoracic joint. That's very important. So those are a few things to look for to make sure you pass the self-assessment. Another exercise you can do as a self-assessment to see your ability to progress to the next exercise is wall angels. So wall angel is very specific for volleyball approach and spike more so, or any overhead athletes. Because as we know, we're not always hitting the ball at 1 o'clock, even though we'd like to. You have to hit the ball sometimes outside your zone. So with the wall angel, it's very similar to the shoulder flexion test, but it's more specific to an overhead spike. So what Evgeny's going to do is bring his arms up to 90-90 first, making sure his wrists, elbows, and shoulder joint are all touching the wall. Once he's there, he tries to raise them up, pushing back, keeping all those 3 points in contact and bringing it back down. So this not only shows your joint mobility, but it's also stability of the scapulothoracic joint. So you need the mobility and also the stability. Now, he's doing it very well. As you can see, it's keeping in contact the whole time. But if you struggled with this assessment and you failed it, some things you might see are the arms wouldn't even be able to reach back against the wall. So he can't reach back. He doesn't have that external rotation. This also tests your external rotation and abduction. He also might touch his fingers and not being able to touch his wrist as well. And he might not be able to go higher, as well as his neck might be helping him as well. So he's trying to compensate for not having the adequate mobility. Another great shoulder exercise you can do at home is called dynamic backburn or the swimmer's exercise. This one takes into consideration all the movements of your thoracic spine and the scapula on the spine. A lot of times we're told to do T's and Y's, which are beneficial, but this is more of a functional total work on that area. So what you're going to do here is bring your chest up. Notice how Evgeny isn't bringing his head back. He's not extending it straight. He's not doing that. And he's setting his scapula, so he's pinching his shoulder blades together. Right, that's very important to make sure this is on. These, you can feel these. Now, he's going to start the movement by coming out, arms are straight, and he's going to be coming around. We have these towels here to make sure that he goes over. And as he passes them, his thumbs will come up, he reaches up, he rests there, and then he comes back. Now you should be shaking here if you know you did it properly. You're doing it very well done. And you want to bring it back down. One more, he's clearing it a lot of distance. He's not hiking through his shoulder, he's keeping very stable. Now, some things you might see is people hike through the back. You don't want to do that. You also don't want to hike up your shoulders too much, because then your traps will get engaged and you might get some tension in your head. Another thing, you don't want to tip your shoulder blades forward. You want to make sure that your shoulder blades are back and down, not forward and up. So those are things you want to make sure you're working on when you're doing this properly. And if you know you did it properly, if you're sore between your shoulder blades the next day. Good. And rest. An exercise that we make sure athletes can do before they get back into competition is called the Turkish get-up. This exercise takes into consideration everything we've been talking about, from ankle, knee, hip, low back, shoulder stability. So what Evgeny's going to do is start on his back, and he has a water first before the weight, because you need to make sure that you're biomechanically in line and efficient. If you try this with weight and you're out of alignment, you're putting too much strain through your joints. So in order to make sure that his technique is right, we start with water, because if he's spilling the water, that means he's going to be off alignment. So the first part of this is working your core. So you use your core to do a crunch up onto your elbow. Then from there, you're going to further engage your abs and come up onto your wrist. Now everything should be in alignment so far. Next, he's going to be doing hip extension using his glutes and his hamstrings, what we worked on before, not pushing through his back. Good. Now he's going to swing his leg through underneath and still be in alignment. Now hold it there. Now you should see a perfect alignment, which is great, and that's why he's able to hold the water like it is. If he was off alignment, it'd be tough for his shoulder to hold it, and that's why we do this before the weight. Then from here, we transition through onto the knee with the strong core. Good. Then from there, you want to push up, doing hip extension again, up and standing, while he's contracting his abs and his glutes and his hamstring. Good. Now, he's done it so far, we want to make sure you can do the same thing eccentrically, coming back down to where he is. So he's going to reverse the pattern, reverse the steps. So go ahead. He's going to step back, very slow and controlled. Good. Now he's going to tip to the side. Good. Now he's going to push through his hip and swing his leg through again. Yep, very controlled, good. He's still in alignment. Then he goes back to his elbow while contracting the abs, and then go all the way back down and rest. That's one rep. So now that he's demonstrated the ability to keep proper alignment, we can add a weight. It's very important to make sure that the alignment is there, or the weight can cause some injuries. So again, he's going to go through that same motion. So come up through there. Now, if he was struggling, the weight was too much, and he didn't have the proper alignment or stability, he'd be putting strain through his shoulder. So it's very important to make sure that you keep it in alignment. Good. Now come up, push up through onto your hand. Good. Now this part is very important. He has to bring his hips up as high as he can. If you didn't, you'd be dragging your foot through and being lazy, and that can cause problems on your back. So make sure you have your hips up as high as you can. Good. And then bring your leg through. Good. That's key. Now we got to make sure that we're stable throughout. He's not rushing through the movements. All the weight is in proper alignment. Then he comes up, engages his side abs, and now he's straight, focused, regains control, and now he finishes by pressing up through the glutes and hamstrings. Good. And then we reverse that, and if he did it incorrectly, he'd be rushing, he'd be off balance, he'd be pushing down too quickly. You want to make sure that you're not rushing through this. He'd be dragging his heel through. So you want to make sure that you're doing everything controlled, slow, and with purpose and intention. Good, all the way back down, contracting your abs eccentrically, and rest.